Joining us now, macroeconomist and professor of international business at the University of Maryland. He's letting his hair down as usual. He's going to talk about Beyonce's hips. He's Peter Morici. Hey, Peter, thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, I didn't know that I was an expert about Beyonce.
Absolutely. You can do it all, Peter. That's why we have you here.
Yeah.
Actually, what I'd like to ask you about is, first off, this planned merger between American Airlines and U.S. Airways. It looks like it's going to happen now. And I've got a couple of concerns. I mean, listen, I like the free market to go where it needs to go, and if this is the best thing for those two companies, then great. But first of all, it's always a mess when airlines get together. It takes forever for their systems to work together. It takes forever for them to figure out, who's going to stay, who's going to go, what routes they're going to do. But once they're through all that mess, I mean, let's look at it right now in terms of national airlines that really cover the bulk of our country. We're going to be down to 3. We've got American U.S. Airways conglomerate, we've got the Delta Northwest conglomerate, and we've got the United Continental conglomerate. Is that a good thing for the consumer?
No, it's not. Prices will be higher. And not only have prices been rising with these mergers, but service has been getting lousy.
Yeah.
I mean, service is terrible. We're really not getting the same product. It's as if, we used to buy Buicks, and they've raised the price, and now they give us Chevrolets. But they're not even giving us Chevrolets. They're giving Yugos. Really, it's abysmal just how badly the airlines do treat the passengers. And frankly, if we're going to have such a consolidated system, and they need, to have few airlines to make some money, because after all, they've been broke most of the time for the last 20 years. I mean, they've constantly been losing money. Then we may need to return to some sort of regulation.
Well,
we have a minimum. Well, we have.
That was my question. I mean, is it fair, Peter, now 30 years later, to look back at the deregulation of the 80s? Back then, we had Pan Am, TWA, Eastern. I mean, all these other airlines that are now just distant memories. Is it time to rethink about deregulation from an economic perspective?
Well, yeah, it is, because if we're going to have so few airlines, I mean, we're going to have essentially, 2 carriers on each route. By and large, and that's really not enough to give us the kind of competition we need for fair treatment of consumers, and we are not getting fair treatment of consumers. Moreover, one of the problems that we have with regulation, though, is, think about the effectiveness of labor unions to lobby the government to get favorable regulations. One of the problems we had with a regulated airline system is that the workers really got great deals. It was hard to beat being an Eastern pilot in the old days. I mean, there were some guys who got away with working 8 hours a week. One of the things that's already happened is the pilots' union has managed to dramatically up the requirements for entry-level pilots to limit the supply to a level, really, if you're not a military pilot, it's going to be very difficult to get the hours to become a pilot. So there are real issues here. And I don't think that this is necessarily good for the country, but it's the way things are going. It's going to be very hard for Justice Department to say no to these 2 airlines because they've already permitted the previous mergers, even if those were Bush administration mergers.
Yeah, and it's a clash of cultures when you do this. I mean, I remember when Northwest and Delta, I was flying a lot back then, and it was disastrous. United Continental, not quite as bad. The one that went pretty well, I think, was Southwest AirTran. That went pretty well. So far, no major hiccups there, but they're going very slow in that process. I want to ask you about something else, though. We saw a story the other day that said that Canada has gotten rid of its penny. And we know in this country it cost us more than a penny to make a penny, and I'm not sure we need it anymore. Where do you come down on the American penny? Do we need it or do we not need it?
We probably don't need it. I don't think it would much affect the economy if we just rounded up to nickels. It probably would make sense to have instead, a 2-cent piece and get rid of the nickel, so that we're not, rounding up. We're not rounding up too far. I mean, that would be another option. Nickels are very expensive to mint, and they're not much used for anything. You can't buy anything with a nickel anymore. Excuse me, you can buy 2 minutes on a Washington parking meter.
Yeah, that's right.
and that's it. And so on. And by the way, have you noticed that it's much easier to get a parking place these days because parking has become so expensive on the street? People just don't use the district anymore.
Well, and that has been one of the major themes that I've been harping on for some time now, is that policies in the District of Columbia have become so onerous, whether it's parking, whether it's the fact that, if you go into the district, there's about a 90% chance you're going to get a speed camera ticket or a red light camera ticket. I mean, people have gotten to the point where they don't go downtown as much.
Well, no, and they're really discouraged from going down. It's one of these things where city councils can make some money real quick. You raise the parking rates. People have habits of going there, but eventually they adjust their habits and they go someplace else. And that's what happened. Recently, we got a parking ticket for a car that's in Minnesota. My son's car is in Minnesota, and we got a parking ticket for like October while he was out there. Now, we had to go to court to get that ticket removed.
Yeah,
now, is that absurd?
That's a whole day lost right there.
So we lost a whole day, and we sat around the district building, and the judge treated us courteously. But I mean, we were in there with 20 other people waiting our turn, and we lost the whole bloody day. And the district, by the way, the burden of proof was on us. Wholly. I mean, I watched people go through there that had good cases, but, they didn't have the kind of evidence they needed. I mean, basically, the rebutable presumption is you're guilty. Now, fortunately, the ticket was written on a make of car that our car is not. The car is a Mazda, and the license plate is registered as a Mazda. And in this case, it said a Chevy or something. Somebody made a mistake with their bloody computer, where they scan the plates. But the district treats people pretty darn badly. That's all there is to it. We have very high-priced public employees, and we have very poor service. And we have the highest-priced, managers to run our metro system. And what do the cars do? They run into each other. I mean, they shut down lines on weekends routinely, so it takes forever to get to one place to another. I mean, the district is just not a well-run place.
It's not.
Hey, Peter, really quickly, we only have about 30 seconds, but I want to circle back on the airlines. I mean, I think that I'm sure a lot of free marketeers heard you say, well, maybe we should look at regulation again, and their hair is on fire right now. I mean, is there a free market solution to improving airline service? What can we as consumers do without bringing the government in?
I don't think there is a free market solution, and one of the problems Republicans have is that they find that regulation is such an anathema that it's very easily for Obama and the Democrats to over-regulate situations, as they've done on Wall Street, which basically all they've done is create a lot of jobs for their friends, because the reckless trading goes on, the big bonuses go on, and by the way, so do the big political contributions to the Democratic Party.
Yes.
So,
yeah,
I mean,
not a coincidence.
It's an unholy alliance. Now, if we regulate the airlines, watch for the pilots union to learn how to milk that cow, and for the airline attendants to reorganize again and get themselves cushy pensions, and then we'll be paying. Remember, when we had regulated airlines, we had very high rates. We had very high fares, but we're going back to very high fares,
right?
And we're not getting the service. I mean, it's hard to get treated worse. You basically have to go to a third world and fly from a small town in Peru to a small town in Bolivia to be treated worse than you are treated on U.S. Air.
Well, wow. I've actually flown in some third world countries, and you know what? Sometimes the service is better than the United States.
All right, all you workers
Absolutely.
at the airlines, follow Peter Morici on Twitter and send all the hate to him. Now, we didn't bash you; he did. It's P Morici #1 on Twitter.
You guys are copying out. But anyway, my Twitter's @PMarici1. You're welcome to complain to me. Take care.
@PMarici1. Thanks, Peter, for joining us.